This is Dennis Kim, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
This is our first show from the tent, and so it's exciting to be able to do this. And I'm hoping that everything sounds and looks good because I'm on a couch in my tent. It's crazy. Dennis Kim has an incredible job, you guys. He is the concertmaster for the Pacific Symphony, which is the home symphony here in Orange County, and then the venue.
Job and I get to share the stage with incredible musicians and yeah, like you said, we have a chance to play classics, pops, we do ballet, we have kids concerts, so we do a little bit of everything. So it's an exciting job and get to play all different kinds of music.
When you say all different kinds of music, do you mean things like Tchaikovsky and Mozart, or do you mean like all kinds of music?
No, all kinds of music. I mean, our classic series, we have, Tchaikovsky, Mozart, Bach, Bruckner, everything. But then we also, have a chance to play pops. We just talked about it. You came to the Catherine Jenkins concert, and we have a relationship with ABT, so we get to play amazing ballet music. So everything, and we do some rock stuff. So we have a chance to do a little bit of everything.
When you say a little bit of everything, you have Catherine Jenkins come in. The symphony is playing behind her, but she's playing popular songs. Like that's the whole pop thing, right? So she played "I Will Always Love You" and a bunch of other themed songs for Valentine's Day in this case. Is that fun for you guys to do that?
Yeah, I mean, when the artist is amazing and we're putting on a good product, I think it's fun to be on stage with her. It's not what we're trained to do, but I think it's fun. I think most people have fun. And I will always love you in Italian, by the way.
That's incredible. It's neat. The thing about this, there's so many questions because there's 60 of you or so on the in the symphony that any given time that are playing. There's multiple violin players. I think there's 9 bassists or whatever. There's all these people. You get time to count these things. So I'm obsessed by all the different moving parts. How complicated is it to be in this symphony and put on a show?
I don't know. I never thought of it as complicated, but I mean, it's a big team, and a lot of people consider it almost like the army. I mean, we have our music director who is the commander in chief, but we all have our roles, and when we playing big stuff, there's almost 100 of us on stage. So, but everyone knows what their role is, and we work as a team. So, I guess to people who come to the concert, it looks a little complicated, but for us, I think there's a very specific order and everything. So it's what we're trying to do.
And when you're watching as an audience member, basically we never hear a missed note. We never see the look that you guys look. But you guys on your side of it, you're looking for perfection.
Always. I mean, like everything else, I think our goal is for perfection, but we're human. You always have little blips here and there. But our goal is to create the best product and to deliver the best performance always. But we have 3-4 concerts for the same program every week, and I'm going to be honest, we don't play it perfectly every time, but that is always our goal. And I think that the perfection is not what the audience takes home; it's the emotion and the energy. And I think, especially with Pacific Symphony, that's one of the things that we offer guaranteed every night.
I think you guys are a fantastic symphony. We're talking about how the folks in Buffalo, where you used to work, and they thought they had the best symphony in the world. And I feel like this is my symphony. You guys are incredible. Where would you put this symphony? I don't want you to say anything bad. I mean, is there room for improvement? You professional. How would you describe how good you are?
I think there's always room for improvement, and that's with every orchestra in the world. That's including the Berlin Phil and New York Phil. But I think that on our good day, I think we're right up there with any symphony in the world, and some of the players, we have some of the best talent in the world on stage. And so I think when we're at our best and playing stuff that we do well, I think that if you close your eyes, you wouldn't know if this was Pacific Symphony or the LA Phil or the New York Phil or the Boston Symphony. So I'm very proud of our orchestra, and it's so great to hear people like you who appreciate it, and there's so much support in the community. So this is something that we love, and I mean that's why we do what we do. To look out and see the smiles on the people's faces.
No, it's incredible. And I'll just talk to the audience directly here. if you have a symphony in your area or pops or anything like that, live music, whatever it is, enjoy it. The symphony, opera, all these things are incredible and super professional people that it's amazing. Like when you're watching opera and you look down in the pit and there's someone playing, 200-year-old music that's still relevant today, and you're like, this person is singing, they're an absolute pro, they could sing anywhere in the world. This person is playing violin or cello, whatever it is. All these incredible people are doing this for us. It blows me away. You guys got to go check it out.
No, I agree. I mean, it's especially during COVID, I think we realized that, all of us are essential workers. I mean, of course, the doctors and the people who deliver the mail and people who deliver medicine. But I really felt as musicians during COVID that we were essential because, I would get texts, we missed the symphony, when are you guys going back on stage? And so, please take advantage. Come. I promise you, if you come once, you'll come again. So.
It's so good. And tickets are completely affordable, too. And this is not an ad for the symphony, but I really want to encourage people to do it. And if you don't know how to get into symphony and everything, well, one, Dr. Robert Greenberg, friend of mine, I don't know who he is, but he will teach you all how to enjoy Mozart or whoever. Emmanuel Axe played with you guys recently on his tour, and he sits down, throws his flaps back on his tuxedo, sits down, and proceeds to play for 90 minutes of incredible music. Not a note in front of his face, though.
No, it's amazing pianist. And just recently, Alessio Bax came and played Rachmaninoff Third, and he told me some numbers like 70,000 notes or something. And it's completely memorized. It's amazing what these guys can do. These soloists who come and they play a different concerto every week. It's not like he's playing Rachmaninoff Third with every symphony that year. I mean, he plays Rachmaninoff Third. The next day he's playing recital in Boston, and then he plays Schumann concerto. So and all these soloists. I mean, they're incredible people.
What about you guys? Do you guys need the notes in front of you? I mean, you guys know this stuff. I mean, for a lot of the things you've played them your whole life.
Right. I mean, like when we do a Tchaikovsky symphony, I have played it, even in my lifetime, I played it 20, 30 times. But that being said, the conductor always has a different approach to it. So we have the music there, but tempos can be slightly different, interpretation, phrasing, all these things. So as orchestra musicians, we're trained to use the music. But these soloists, it's amazing. I know a lot of the audience is impressed with the memory, but fellow musicians are also very impressed with the memory.
Okay, so what do we not see that's impressive of what you all do? Is it the fact that there's 60 plus of you all synced up, or what do we miss about that?
I guess one thing that I think a lot of people are surprised is like, how many rehearsals do you have for a concert? And some people think, do you guys have 2-3 weeks to rehearse this stuff? And not really. I mean, we have 3-4 rehearsals. They're very intense, and they're very everyone is at 200% concentration, but because of the way the system works, we don't have that much time to rehearse, and we have to perform. So and we have different programs every week. So that's something that I think that a lot of people who are not familiar with the orchestra, they're surprised with.
We had Chris Thomas King on the show the other day, and he's one of the most famous and successful blues musicians that ever plays the guitar. That's his home instrument. And we were talking about why he doesn't write music. Right. And this is a completely different approach to it. He's like, everybody I play with knows what to do. They all know how to play. Now, granted, they can be a little more loose than you guys can, but he's like, I can write the note, but it's like redundant because
blues and jazz is a little different than what we do, because most, not all, but most classical trained musicians, they can't improvise, and we don't have that skill, and we're amazed and we respect what they can do, but that's something that many of us, we feel uncomfortable doing. So we need the notes. But when you see an amazing jazz musician, a blues musician, they don't need the notes, and it's all by feel and eye contact, and you hear something, you react to something. So it's amazing stuff.
Do you have like a side project at all? A lot of musicians do.
I got 1,000 side projects, but I think most recently we've been artists in residence at the Barclay Theater. I've started a piano trio, the trio Barclay, actually, with two close friends of mine, Jonah Kim and Sean Kennard, and we play 3-4 concerts a year at the Barclay Theater, and it's amazing because the head of Barclay Theater, Jerry Mandel, he just basically said, do what you want, and a lot of places they don't say stuff like that. So we play a lot of new music. We play a lot of music by living composers. So next year we have 3 new commissions. So this is stuff that's very exciting for me, and for me to support living musicians, living composers is extremely important, because without that, I think our art will die. Beethoven and Mozart are amazing and incredible, but if we don't continue, I think that yeah, it's not a good sign if we stop playing living composers.
Are you writing any music at all?
No, I don't write music, and I unfortunately don't play another instrument. It's hard enough to play violin, but yeah, that's a question. I get asked a lot. What other instrument do you play? Do you compose? Do you conduct? None of that. I just play violin, and I try anyways.
Yeah. No, you come on. You play well. I mean, it is like if you're a middle distance runner, you run the 800, right?
Right.
Maybe you run the 400 too, but you're very narrow in what you do, because your body becomes adapted to that specific thing. And for a runner specifically, your body starts to break down the harder you train, so you prepare for the Olympics, for the national, and you ramp your way up. And that's sort of what you do. I'm not saying that your body breaks down, but you become adapted to it.
Absolutely. But for me as concertmaster, I have a chance every year to play concerto with the orchestra as a soloist, and then I play chamber music. So I do have a chance to do a bunch of different things. But like you said, my specialty is violin, and my specialty is orchestral music. So, but it's exactly right. I mean, I don't also play saxophone. I don't also compose, and I don't. So.
But if you were to go hang out with your friends and just have a fun, cover band or whatever, and you played the fiddle instead of the violin, would you be able to jump in and do that? Or
yeah, so in Buffalo, actually, our clarinetist was also a jazz musician. He invited me to play, and I was like, what does that mean? What do you want me to do? He's like, just come and you'll see, and you'll feel. I'm like, that's not true. I mean, I'm not gonna be able to do that. Can you tell me what I need to do? And so he wrote down a little music for me, but for me anyways, and a lot of classically trained musicians, improvising and just going, it's very difficult. It's not in our comfort zone. So if I'm forced to do it, I'll try, but it won't be good, let's say.
Yeah. So if someone looks at you and says, "That is Kim," and you go to take your solo, you're gonna be like,
yeah, it's like, can I see the notes? Or what key are we in here?
Yeah. Which sounds limiting, but it really is. It's because of the specialty, your incredible ability to play hundreds of pieces of music. If you can read it, I mean, you can read anything.
Yeah, I mean, especially in this area, a lot of the stuff we do in LA, the studio stuff, almost all of it is you get the music the day of. So you get there and you got a sight read. So we have the best sight readers in the world, all within 100 miles of LA, and so that's what we can do, and that's something that I'm confident in. I can sight read anything, because as you can imagine, you have one take. If you screw up, they got to stop the rehearsal. They have to stop recording, and that's time is money, obviously. So in this area, you have some of the best sight readers in the world.
Well, and again, like just to illustrate how challenging it is for you guys to do, I learned this from Dr. Bob. When someone like Mozart writes something, he wrote it in that time, and what entertainment was different back then. And so he might be like, all these violin players are a pain in my ass. I'm going to write something that's going to push them past their limit. And so he'll write something that no one had heard before. You didn't have recorded music, and so these guys had to sight read something that was just impossible to play. That's got to be a riot for you guys to do that.
Yeah, of course, things have changed. I mean, even the Barber Violin Concerto, the third movement, the person who commissioned it, they said it's unplayable. And now you have kids in high school, kids in junior high playing Barber Violin Concerto. So like everything else, things have changed, and a lot of it for the better. But yeah, I can only imagine in Mozart's time when he wrote something, what the public, how they would play it, because some of that stuff is hard.
Yeah. And I guess another thing that we sort of lost is the instant like, do it again. Everybody gets up and starts clapping and give you the standing ovation, and you're like, back it up. We're going to do this movement one more time. Like, we don't do that ever anymore, do we?
Yeah, no. I mean, we sometimes play encores, but we don't repeat the same piece. That's not something that we do. But in a recital situation, when you're playing by yourself, that if someone really loved this one movement, you could do that again. But usually, if there's an encore, there's something prepared.
Do you, when you work in the industry and you play, first chair violin, concertmaster for a prominent symphony, do you have to do anything else financially? And I'm trying to ask how much you make, but do you have I also sell insurance or?
I always joke that because we rehearse at night, that I could drive Uber during the day. Yeah. But no, I teach. Of course, I teach privately, and this year, I have a chance to teach at UCI. a few amazing students. I mean, some of them were computer science majors who play violin, and at quite a high level actually. I'm lucky enough to work in the studios in LA. So that's something I do also. But that's a problem with a lot of orchestras in America. You know, to be able to survive just on the symphony salary is a challenge for a lot of cities, especially if you live in a place like Irvine. That's just something that was special with Buffalo. If you had a section salary, you could still buy a house in Buffalo and live in Buffalo. But to have a section job in Pacific Symphony, it's not easy to live in Irvine. I mean, people live further away, so that's one of the challenges, and that's something that we always have to work harder for and try to negotiate.
And is there a steady flow of business? I mean, look, this is a show business part of the world, right? So even though you're not in LA, you can be in LA in an hour, and maybe someone's like, "Hey, I want to have someone come and I mean, look, there's enough money here in Orange County that someone's like, I want to hire the four of you guys to do a quartet for my kids, you know, quinceañera, whatever it's going to be."
Right.
But you can get a lot of side work, I'm assuming. And does that come through the symphony, or how do you guys?
It doesn't come through a symphony, but I know some members of the orchestra who had huge like wedding business. I mean, they would do 100 weddings a year. So if that's what you're interested in, and that's these things are available. But for me as concertmaster, I have to focus all my attention, or most of my attention, on my job with the symphony. So to try to dilute that with another job that's that time consuming would be of course difficult. But I think most of the people in the orchestra, they teach a little bit, and some of us play in the studios, and I think very few of us have a completely separate job. That being said, we have a few people, you know, we have a professor at USC who teaches something completely different than music, and he's also a cellist in our orchestra. So our orchestra is a little bit different because we rehearse at night, so that's possible. But most orchestras, like someone in the LFL, cannot also, you know, sell insurance, like you say, because it's, you know, full-time job, 10 to 4 every day. So
is there a certain instrument in the symphony where you guys are all like, oh, that guy, like the piccolo player, like, nah, that guy's got nothing to carry, he can put in his pocket? Is there like someone who's like, that guy's got the sweetest gig in this whole band?
No, I think every musician respects each other's, because they all have different roles. But like, you know, you see sometimes you're like, oh, that, you know, an audience member especially will be like, oh, that triangle player, he played 3 notes. You know, is he getting paid the same? But those 3 notes are sometimes the most important 3 notes, and if he messes up, I promise you'll notice. Where, you know, a section violinist, if they mess up, you know, you might not notice. But everyone has their role, and everyone is again, I hate to use the word again, but essential. Because if you have a bad timpanist, or if you have a bad horn player or bass player, you're only as good as your weakest link. So we try, everyone on stage is the most important musician.
And when it comes to percussionists, no one's just a triangle player. They're also playing other things as well.
Right, I mean,
all kinds of different things.
I think they have to play everything. I don't know if the timpanist does everything, but yeah, the piccolo, the triangle player also has to play glockenspiel and cymbals, and some of the most amazing auditions I've ever heard have been percussionists, because they have to play 17 instruments perfectly, and it's not just play the violin; you have to play violin and 16 other instruments. So it's very impressive.
Yeah, like if you guys, and I'm gonna ask a 2-part question here. A while back, we saw you guys playing Bu仨alo, right? And so, yeah, the percussionist goes and stands over a snare drum. He just barely plays it. Like, it's the quietest drumming part I've ever heard, you know? And then the next night, he might be, you know, doing something that involves a totally different motion to do the percussion thing.
Not the next night. It might be later on in the program. They go back there and play glockenspiel. So, yeah, absolutely.
And then Bu仨alo is so sticky. You won't get that out of your head for days. It's back in my head. I mean, do you guys get songs stuck in your head?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because Bu仨alo is so popular. Actually, we're starting next season with Bu仨alo, but this is a piece that Ravel hated. He never wanted it to be performed, and he wrote it for school. And who knew that it would become this popular? I personally love Bu仨alo, and it's, like you said, something that sticks in your head. And it's genius because you have this very simple theme, and it just gets repeated by every instrument in the orchestra, and it stays with you, and it's amazing. A lot of my colleagues don't like Bu仨alo. I love Bu仨alo.
Yeah. So what don't you guys like to play? Like, you're like, oh, we're gonna play. You do it. You're pros, but you don't gotta like everything.
I'm going to quote a colleague of mine who lived in Finland. So we were playing a new piece, brand new piece, and yeah, it wasn't the best piece. It was very tonal, and didn't seem like it was written well. And he played it like it was his favorite piece, and I was like, Rainus, did you enjoy that piece? Are you okay? He's like, no, I hated that piece. I was like, but you played it. It's like, but this is our job. We have to make it seem like this is our favorite piece, because if we don't enjoy it, the audience will never enjoy it. So that's my attitude towards anything we do on stage. It's my favorite piece, because if I play it the way it should be played, someone in the audience might be their favorite piece. So I mean, just recently, our trio, um, we played a very fan-friendly cafe music, and we played lovely stuff. And then we played a brand new piece by Mark Elder, and a lot of the audience members, they said, my favorite piece was that new piece. It was incredible. And I was shocked. And if you don't have that attitude, if you have the attitude of like, oh, this piece is, I can't wait to get over this piece. Let's get to the Brahms and the Schoenfeld. But some audience members came to me and said, that was my favorite piece in the program. So that's our goal, to always perform as if this is our favorite piece.
How much does emotion matter, though? I mean, okay, you're professionals. You're going to play the pieces that you don't like well. But then what about, like, if you love Ravel and you're just like, oh, my God, I just love this piece. Can you transmit that through the building?
I hope so. And that's what comes with this live music. If you don't feel that, I think that something's wrong. If you don't feel the energy and the passion from the orchestra playing any music, I think that we're not doing our job properly. So that is my goal anyways. I don't know if that's the goal of everyone on stage, but I know for a fact that, Carl Sinclair, our music director, that's his goal. He's so passionate about everything he does. Every rehearsal, he's 100% energy and passion. So if that kind of energy is coming from the podium, that is obviously, it's contagious. And I can't imagine when Carl's conducting, you sit back and you kind of use 10% energy, because for me, that's impossible.
Yeah. So Carl's out there doing his job, and you guys get used to what he does. But then you had Larry Lowe come in on the show the other day. He comes in totally different style. You had the guy from the Valentine's Day concert with Catherine Jenkins. How different is it for you all to perform with these different conductors?
No, I mean, we have different conductors all the time. I mean, our music director has the bulk of the classics, but for every pops concert, and we have guest conductors for the classics also. The different conductors for ABT, for the ballet, they're all different, totally different personalities. So for us, I mean, it's like you said, we're professionals, so we do our jobs, but every little motion that the conductor does affects the sound, affects the timing, affects everything. So it's interesting because no orchestra plays with the same conductor every week. So the business is that guest conductors come through. So that's exciting for a lot of musicians, and some conductors do some things better than others. Of course, we're all human, but that's something that's really fun with Pacific, because we do so many different kinds of programs that you get to see all the different conductors.
A lot of the guys that have come through that I've seen, they have quite a bit of character to them. Is that a common thing for conductors?
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't have character and charisma, you shouldn't be a conductor. I mean, you should, no viola jokes, but sit in the back of the viola section if you don't have any character. But yeah, I think that position, you need character, you need charisma, you need personality, and for all kinds of music.
So, you're the concertmaster, first chair violinist. You play this incredible violin that's worth millions of dollars. Are you at the apex of your career in terms of like what you want to get done? I mean, obviously you're going to do other projects, I think, but do you need anything besides playing that violin in that chair?
I'm a big sports fan, so I think this idea of if you don't keep on getting better, you're getting worse. You can't stay the same. So for me, I'm always trying to get better. I'm always trying to improve. Because you can't ever play perfectly. Always something can be better. So, and I try to take that attitude towards the symphony. Of course, I want my first violin section to sound better, better today than it was yesterday, and then I want the string section to sound better, and then the orchestra to sound better. So, that's my attitude. To come prepared and to keep on improving, because there's no chance to stay the same. You can only get better, or you're getting worse.
To use that sports analogy, like a pitcher, you can give that pitcher very specific, like hyper detailed correction, like, hey, pronate your wrist like 10 degrees, and then I want an extra pound of pressure on the ball when you throw it, and we'll see if we get a little more ride out of that thing. I mean, is that the kind of detail that you can do? And then do you have a coach who's like, I want you to lighten up your grip on the
right. So our coach right now is the conductor, and usually it's Carl Sinclair, but Sometimes when a guest conductor, that's the boss for the week. So they'll offer suggestions, they'll offer different interpretations, and that's the fun part of live music, because yeah, you can play Tchaikovsky 4 with 10 different conductors and it'll be 10 different performances. And not only that, if you have Tchaikovsky 4 3 nights, each night will be a little bit different, and that's the beauty of live music. And I know some kids who come to concerts, students, and they'll hear a soloist play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and each night is different. And they're not trying to play differently, but it's just natural that this phrase goes this way one night, and another night it goes a little bit differently. And it's not on purpose. I think that's how we feel. Depends what you ate that day. Depends what you the experience you had that day. You know, you talked to your wife or you didn't talk to your wife. Like all these things, I think affect musicians and our performances.
You play an instrument that's 200 years old.
1701, so even more than 200, yeah.
300 years
exactly.
320 years old. So how much does that thing change over the decades, the centuries?
Yeah, it's incredible, because a movie that I watched when I was younger called The Red Violin. I mean, it went through the history of this one violin, and it was a fictional story, but I can only imagine what the history is with my violin, because in the last 14 years that I've played it, I've lived in Hong Kong, Korea, Finland, Buffalo, and now in Orange County. So even in the last 14 years, it's played in concert halls around the world. So I can only imagine 300 years what kind of stuff it's gone through. But yeah, it's and every instrument's like that. It doesn't have to be a Strat. I mean, any instrument has this kind of history of from when it was made till today. So it's fascinating.
I might be remembering this wrong, but I think it was you. You were playing a Tchaikovsky piece, which is, you know, a little over that 100 years old, and your violin debuted that piece, and it's the first time anybody heard it, including Tchaikovsky. It's
Stravinsky. So
Stravinsky.
yeah.
Okay.
So I played a 1701 Dushkin Stradivarius, and Samuel Dushkin was a close friend of Stravinsky. So a lot of Stravinsky's music was premiered on this violin, and of course I am superstitious, but whenever I play Stravinsky, I feel something special. There's something inside, and so there's something special whenever I play Stravinsky with this violin, because yeah, I mean, this violin premiered a lot of the works that Stravinsky composed, so it's amazing.
Can you? I mean, I know you're superstitious. Do you feel it? Do you like
a little bit? Again, maybe I can't prove it, but when I play Stravinsky, there's something in there that's a little bit different for me.
And do you have a different responsibility to that music, since it's the home music for that violin?
I mean, a little bit, of course. I mean, I know that, you know, when Stravinsky wrote this, I mean, he had this violin sound in his head, so that kind of stuff, it all comes into play, I think.
It's crazy. I mean, there really is this. It's like when you go to an old stadium, you're like,
no.
Played here. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And no, again, I don't want to come off that I love sports more than music, but you know, I totally agree with you. You know, when you go to Old Maple Leafs Garden, I mean, this is where they won all these championships, and all the seats and everything has so much history. So with this fellow, same.
Yeah. Is that true for other instruments, like like the piccolo, the whistle, you know?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think a lot of wind instruments, after a while, they actually are not so good anymore. So you have to get a new instrument. Like I know that's the case with clarinet. You know, you play it for a few years and then it becomes unplayable. So you need a new clarinet, which is not the case with string instruments. I mean, you know, if you maintain it well, I mean, my violin is 320 years old. I don't think there are any 320-year-old clarinets. I mean, those are unplayable now. So.
Right. And what about horns? How long do those things last?
Again, I'm not an expert, but similar. I think that a lot of those people they upgrade and they keep on getting new stuff. It must be for a reason. So.
And then, are there? I mean, I know that there are more violin makers and string instrument makers who maybe like this guy made the best bass or whatever. But are there high end, like this is I think something that people auction off, like for the French horn or for the timpani, or like that one was made by Hohner, and oh my God, it's the only one that anybody wants to play. Because the violin has this with Stradivarius and other makers.
Right.
Are the other instruments that, or can you just go to Yamaha and get their concert level whatever?
Yeah, I think my daughter plays flute, so I think like the best flute right now is one being made right now, and you get the best one. And bassoon's the same. You know, you get a Heckel that's made today. That's the best instrument out there. Whereas that's not the case with violin. There are amazing new makers in violin, but no one would choose a modern instrument over a Strat if they had the money. So yeah, I'm not really sure with brass instruments, but for sure I think the string instruments are the only ones that keep their value and go up in value over time.
What about the piano? Do you think that? I mean, now that we have like a solid frame, that because not piano fortes don't really exist anymore.
Right. No, pianos are similar. I think that there are pianos that have history and all those reasons are valuable. But I think a brand new Steinway from Hamburg right now is probably the best piano out there.
Right.
So I don't think it ages. It doesn't get better with age.
And then we talked earlier about before we did the show, but Stradivarius isn't the only guy that made a violin.
Right, but it's amazing that everyone and their mother knows who Stradivarius is. You talk to a cab driver. When I go through airports, they're like, when I'm like, "Can you be careful with my violin?" They're like, "What is it, a Stradivarius?" I'm like, "Yes, it is." But there are amazing makers like Guarneri del Gesù who are actually more valuable and more rare, but no one knows who that is. And but there are instruments from that time that are very valuable: Bergonzi, Guadagnini, Amati, which is even older than Strad. But somehow, I mean, Stradivarius must have had a good agent, or he must have been really good at social media. Oh my gosh.
I know, right? It's so if you are playing an Amati or whatever, and you're like, "Hey, take care of my violin," and they're like, "Why? Is it a Stradivarius?" You're like, "Yes," because they don't know that. Otherwise, it wouldn't have any.
It was funny. One time, I lived in Finland for 6.5 years, so I was going through immigration in Finland, and I was like, "Can you please be careful?" And he was like, "It's very valuable." He's like, "What is a Stradivarius?" I'm like, "Yes, and it's worth blah blah blah." He's like, "Please don't exaggerate. I'm a musician. I play drums. So I mean, if I was going to exaggerate, why would I say that? I would have said $10,000." But he was like, "Don't exaggerate about the price because." But it's it's amazing that everyone knows what a Stradivarius is.
What is it like to have to carry around a multi-million-dollar thing all the time?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. If I was carrying that much cash around, I would have a bodyguard. I would have it handcuffed to my wrist. But luckily it's insured, and my violin especially, you can't steal my violin and sell it. If you can steal it and play it, and that would be the only thing. But like if you took my violin and try to sell it, it would be impossible because it's so well documented. It's in books. It's so in some ways my violin is a little bit safer than, let's say, like $100,000 violin. If you steal $100,000 violin, you can sell it for $60,000 somewhere. But my violin, unless you're gonna play it, like I said, it's pointless to steal because you can't ever get rid of it.
But what like Felton Pilot plays horns in Confunction, and he's going up the stairs in some venue, and he stomps on his trombone. You have to move this thing around in his space.
There are a million stories, as you can imagine. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of stories where Yo-Yo Ma leaves his Strad cello in a cab. Yeah. Lynn Harrell was the same thing. So we're human. It happens, but and that's why we have insurance. Knock on wood, we'll find some wood here somewhere. But it's if you actually think about the value and then you're carrying around, then it would be impossible to travel with it. But you trust that God will look out for you and your instrument.
But you do have to modify your behavior, though. I mean, like if I carry a loaded weapon, part of my brain is always there. Or if I have a knife in my hand, I only do whatever that knife is there for, and then I put the knife down.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
if I keep walking around with the knife in my hand to go get a drink, I'm gonna stick something. I'm gonna do something that I don't tend to do. So I have to modify my behavior for a knife, or a gun, or whatever. You must have things like, I only do this when I have the violin in the hand.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing is that it's a very small thing, but I have a very heavy case. It's very safe and sturdy. Where a lot of people I know, they have the lightest case possible because they travel a lot and they want something light. But so little things like that. I guess unconsciously I've chosen a heavier case that's a little more safe. But other than that, I don't leave my violin in the car and stuff like that. But if you start thinking like that, now I have a multi-million-dollar violin with me at all times. It'd be hard to live and hard to move around.
So everybody else in your section doesn't play the Stradivarius.
I mean, that's a funny story. The Pacific Symphony is the only orchestra in the world, I would say, that there's two Strads in the orchestra, and they're both not owned by the orchestra. So there are a lot of orchestras that have multiple Strads. I think Berlin Phil, LA Phil definitely has a Strad, but it's owned by the orchestra. Right. Whereas my violin is owned by a friend of mine, and then a colleague of mine, Robert Shimiski, he bought it from his father, or his father bought it when he was young and when it was kind of affordable. But we have two Strats in the section that are not owned by the orchestra. So I'm sure that we're the only orchestra in the world with that claim.
Wow. And then any other Strats in the like bass or
No, I mean, yeah, a Strat cello is very rare, and viola also. So, but a lot of my colleagues have very nice instruments, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, Strat, just the two of us.
So in general, yours is on loan to you and everything else, but where do people go? Like, I'm going to be in this symphony, I'm going to play in this section, I don't have access to a Stradivarius. Again, are you going to go to Yamaha and get their highest end one? And because I know that there's all kinds of modern violins, they've done the tests and everything, and you really can't tell much of a difference, if at all. And a lot of it's just the name of the Stradivarius and everything. But what do they do, and then what do those cost? Or does the concert or the symphony own, whatever violin that we're using?
So some people have donated instruments to the symphony. So now the symphony owns a few instruments. We have some actually great violins, but yeah, I mean it's tough because we don't all come to the audition and play the same piano. So some applicant comes and their violin sounds just so much better than the next person. They have an advantage, obviously,
Yeah.
and some people's instruments are not that great, but they're a great player. So it's very difficult. But yeah, usually when a high school kid getting ready for college, they're gonna upgrade to a really nice instrument, and that's the instrument you use until you get a job. And so,
what does that mean? A really nice instrument? Like, how much money does that set you back for?
Yeah.
He's going to go to Juilliard,
right? Every country's a little different. Growing up in Canada, I mean, my parents, when I auditioned for Curtis at that time, so this is '89, we spent $40,000 at that time, and that was all the money in the world for us.
Yeah.
But in Korea, you hear crazy stories of kids when they go to high school, they get a $100,000 violin. And I'm not saying that Canada or US, people don't have money, but it's less. I think that there's more importance put on just education instead of just the quality of the violin. But yeah, it's expensive. It's not cheap.
And if your kid turns out to be have this incredible talent, and then you just have a regular person job, $40,000 is that buy you a house in a lot of countries. I mean, that's
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people that I know this story. But when I got my violin, so we paid it in installments, and $40,000 US at the time was, like I said, more money than my parents had. So we borrowed and we sold and stuff, and the last payment was, let's say, $6,000, and we just didn't have it. And so I had now been playing this violin for about 3-4 months, and my parents said, "We don't have the last payment. We have to return this violin, and we're going to lose our deposit, but we just don't have any more money." And at that time, we had a convenience store, a grocery store, and some guy walked in, asked for a lottery ticket. It was called a quick pick, so you don't actually pick, but the computer.
Yeah.
And my father rang it all up, and then he gave the guy the lottery ticket. He's like, "I didn't ask for a quick pick." He's like, "No, you just said quick pick." He's like, "No, I never played lottery." So my dad had to put the dollar in and eat that ticket.
Yeah.
That ticket hit 5 out of 6 numbers and was like $7,000. It was the exact payment for the last payment, and of course, my dad at the time was like, "No, if it was all 7 numbers, then it would have been $7 million." And so God gives just as much as you need. But and that sounds like a fake story, but it's 100% true story. And that's how I got my instrument that helped me get into Curtis, of course. And that's the violin that I used to get my first job. So
you still own it?
I still have it. So it's an amazing story.
How many violins do you own?
I have a bunch of modern violins, and obviously the violin that I play is not mine, but so I have a few violins, and some of my students use my violins. And
a lot of the musicians we've had that are incredible and go on to work professionally, they often say, I wasn't better than everybody else. I just could continue to go. I continue to get better. I continue to practice. And then at some point they realize, I can make money doing this. So what is your story like that? Like, when you elevate, okay, great, you practice your head off and you get better and better in high school, but at some point you realize, no, this is what I'm going to do. And then probably you realize, actually, I can front an entire symphony and be a concert. Like, how does that go for you?
So I don't know any student, especially this day and age, where they choose a life in music for money. That's never the main goal. And for me, anyways, when I knew that I could possibly do this was when I got into Curtis.
Okay.
And Curtis Institute of Music is a school in Philadelphia, and it's a very small school, but everyone who got in at that time was on full scholarship. And growing up in Toronto, I didn't know what level I was at. I mean, I was pretty good in my age group, and I won some local competitions, but I didn't know if I could compare it to other kids in the world. And when I got into Curtis, I realized, oh, maybe I can do this. And that's the time that I said, okay, this is what I want to do for a living. And then at Curtis, of course, I was introduced to the Philadelphia Orchestra, and my love of orchestral music came from youth orchestra and going to Curtis. And so from a young age, I wanted to play an orchestra. And then um, to answer your question a little more specifically, for me, teachers who were very supportive were the most important thing. Um, when I do these interviews, they say, what's needed to be a professional musician? Uh, Supportive parents, great teachers, and then third is talent, and in that specific order. Because if you don't have parents, it doesn't matter if you meet the right teachers, and you can't afford to take lessons. And if you don't have teachers who are supportive and who are encouraging, a lot of kids, they quit young because they don't meet the right teachers. So
Right. That talent part, though, I mean, you have to develop talent. You can start out and be like, wow, you really are ahead of everybody, but at some point, everybody gets to catch up. They keep coming. So when does talent start to separate for a kid? Like when you go up a level, you go up a level. It's like sports. You play in college, but then you start to realize your desire, your talent aren't in line with the best player of the team.
right.
How does that work in what you do?
I mean, I think it's still talent is still attached to the teacher. I mean, with talent, and if your teacher develops that talent, I think that is the magic formula. Because I know a lot of kids who are very talented who didn't have the right training, the right teacher, and they don't make it. And then, that being said, of course, you need a little bit of talent. It's not like
Yeah.
you can't take anyone and make them a musician. But like I said, I think the order is very specific. You need supportive parents,
Mhm.
the right teachers, and then talent. And then, of course, hard work. There's a lot of kids who are very talented who don't work, and that's also you hear a lot of stories of kids who are in high school who were the best violinists and the best pianists, and then they just didn't work that hard and they never made it. So it's a fine balance of all those things, and a little bit of luck, of course.
There's also a sorting process for what you play because some people end up on the viola, and I don't think people start at the viola. It seems like you would end up there. Maybe the same thing is true for
Oh, I think some viewers can be upset.
I'm not saying anything bad about anybody, but that's how it seems like. Okay, everybody has a violin laying in the
Mm.
closet somewhere, so maybe they have a viola, and you start there. And then like the thing with the bass, like, do you start off on the bass, or is like, hey, Fred, why don't you grab that bass in the back of the band room? We need someone to play, and then all of a sudden,
No, I mean,
how does that work
you
out?
always hear these stories of that's how they got started. My daughter plays bassoon, and in Finland, yeah, we said, okay, you can't play piano because your sister plays piano, and so what do you want to play? She said, I don't know. So she tried all the instruments, and she played the bassoon, and the teacher was like, oh, you should play bassoon, and she plays bassoon now. So everyone comes at a different angle of how they start their instrument, but no, nowadays people do start on the viola,
Okay.
and yeah, it's a little bit bigger instrument, so usually kids start a little later, and a lot of times, of course, people start on the violin and they go to viola. But now there are some kids who actually start on the viola.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then why does the violin get all the cello also, but why are those solo instruments versus no one's holding a whole concert all captive by playing the bass with the piano. You need to have.
Now I gotta introduce you to some amazing bass players.
Isn't that amazing? I'm just saying that when you go out, it's like a cellist or
Right.
a violinist that you see. So what makes those instruments different than their sibling instruments?
Right. So first of all, I think there's less solo repertoire for violists and bass players, but there are a few. And when you hear an amazing violist play solo with the orchestra, you would be blown away just as much as a violinist or a pianist. And the same with bass. I mean, there if you go on YouTube and there are some bass players who are magicians who can get around the instrument and it makes it sound like a cello or violin or even better. So, but there's just less repertoire for them to play because if there's 500 piano concertos and 30 violin concertos, there's probably 3 bass concertos. So that's one of the reasons. And they were designed. I don't know if design is the right word, but their main function is to play in an orchestra or play quartet, like a violist. I mean, they play the inner lines of a quartet, and that's what they're known for, and that's their main. But like I said, there are some viola solos out there that are as good or better than violin soloists.
much of your life is consumed by, I'll call it classical music? You know, I mean, are you listening to it in the car? Are you thinking about it? Are you reading about composers? Or is this more your job? How would you characterize how much of your life is consumed by the music that you create?
It's a tough question too. I mean, of course, for work and for preparation of work, it's that's all classical music. I listen to a lot of classical music, especially the stuff we're going to be playing now or soon, and I practice. But that being said, I listen to all kinds of music. I listen to the Beatles. I listen to K-pop. I listen to I don't just listen to classical music in the car. But some of my colleagues, they do just listen to classical music. So everyone's a little bit different, and everyone is human. I mean, everyone has different interests. I love sports. I follow sports religiously, and some people love, gardening, and so everyone has different interests. But I wouldn't say that it's just my job. I love classical music, but I'm not exclusive to. I would never listen to the Beatles, or I would never listen to Snoop Dogg. I mean, those guys are amazing in their own way.
Yeah. They are amazing. And then when you think about the music that you want to play, because there's a repertoire that's played because it makes money, and your symphony needs to do that. But when someone's like, "Hey, we're going to play," or maybe you get to pick because you're the concertmaster, but is there something that you want to play but don't get to play enough?
This is a very good point and very good question because in America, since there's no funding from the government, like you said, we have to play certain things that have to make money. We need to bring people in. But working in Europe and in Asia, where it's heavily funded by the government, we got to play a lot of new music, a lot of music that people were not familiar with, and it was not so fan friendly. And so I miss doing that a little bit. But next season, I'm playing a new violin concerto by a composer named John Weinglass. I mean, this is something that's so exciting for me to be part of this process of creating a new concerto. So yeah, to be honest, I would love to play some more new music, but I understand what the situation is, um, and like you said, I don't get to choose what I get to play because we have music director and the CEO, but I offer suggestions, and I'm so grateful that I have a chance to do this concerto next year.
If someone said, "Hey, Dennis, my kid's getting married. I'd love to have you come and solo," like, is that a big ask of you, even if they're going to pay you, or you're like, "Oh, man,
So when I was in school and when I was younger, I did more weddings than you can imagine.
Yeah.
So now, unless it's a close family friend or someone that I know very well, I wouldn't play at their wedding. I would suggest some group to play at the wedding, but yeah, it doesn't matter about the money. I've done enough of that.
Yeah.
But I have played weddings in the recent past, of board members' kids or people that I'm very close to,
Yeah.
and where money is not the issue. It's just the chance to be part of the wedding. But if anyone asks me about that and they say, "Oh, can you do it?" I'm like, "Well, I can't, but I know this amazing group that can." So, but I think for me now to play at a wedding, it has to be a personal connection. It can't be just a gig.
And would you even charge them? I'm not trying to give your stuff away for free, but or would you be like, "This is my gift to them to do it"?
No, yeah, if it's someone close enough, I mean, it wouldn't be about money. It would just be about just a chance to be part of the wedding.
If you could know that you were going to play, this is the last song you were going to play, what song would you want to
That's that's a really tough question. My gosh. Yeah, and people ask like, if you die, what piece do you want to be played at your funeral? And that's also a question. Like, there's so many choices, so it's hard to say. But and it changes all the time.
Right.
What my favorite piece is changes all the time. But I love Schubert. I love Bach. So maybe something like that. But like I said, that answer could change an hour from now, and definitely next week it'll change. So
Is there a time when you're playing and the piece is so moving that you actually feel a little tear at us? Like, we would never see it, you're too far away, but you must feel some of that music at a level that causes you to respond.
yes and no. I think you are fully involved, but you can't let yourself get to that point because you have to concentrate on playing correctly. And again, unless it's the last quarter of the note, there's lots of stuff coming up. So there are pieces that I play that remind me of certain things, and that brings it back a lot of emotion. But again, it's when we played Barber Adagio for the first time at Carnegie Hall with my teacher conducting, and we did it for for the passing of his teacher.
Mhm.
So when he was conducting, he cried a little bit, and that made the whole orchestra cry. So that kind of stuff happens. But when I play a beautiful phrase or a beautiful piece, yeah, I can't let myself get to that point because I have to focus on the rest of the concert. So I hope that answers your
No, it
question.
does, but these are the things like you go on a journey as an audience member, you go on a journey, right? And the music is designed to take you on a journey. And so when you, it's a hypnosis, right? You sit there and then you go, and so I'll look at my girlfriend afterwards and we'll have similar, like our brain will go to a similar place, and it's based upon our lives.
Mhm,
Because
absolutely.
but do you, I know like if I'm editing the show and I get lost in the show, I'm like, that's good because I stop being professional and I start to be audience.
Mhm.
So do you have those moments where you have to, hey, Dennis, pay attention, you're actually working here?
No, no, absolutely. And sometimes when you're playing, you see like an audience member crying. That obviously affects you. I mean, you're not a robot. You're not like, oh, that person's crying. So I mean, I remember when I played the Philip Glass concerto in Buffalo, I was playing a slow movement, and it's yeah. I mean, you have to focus and you got to play in tune and all this stuff. But you see people they cry. That obviously affects you. And what do they think of? Who knows? And what is it about that piece or my playing that's causing that? Nobody knows, and there's no formula. But the fact that there's some emotion, that's I think that's my responsibility, and that's what I'm hoping. And you see that all the time in the symphony. I mean, the other day we were playing Rachmaninoff Second, and there's a person in the front row just crying. Why? Nobody knows why, but the fact that there was some kind of communication. That's why we do our job.
Comedians, Buddy Hackett talks
Mm.
about this a lot, and I use it in podcasting. Is your brain, you're focused on your job and you're professional and everything else, and maybe that takes 70% of your attention. But you're also aware that, like, okay, so the other night, Catherine Jenkins is singing, and she comes out after a break, and the mic stand is too tall for her, and the mic stand will not cooperate, and it shuts the whole thing down while we try to figure out how to get this mic stand to go down. So some party, and one of your peers gets up from your section and goes backstage to try to deal with this thing, right? So you are aware of other things. If there's a fire in the place, you're not like, oh, I was sorry, I was playing the violin so hard I never noticed. So there are other things that do catch your attention. A crying audience member, maybe someone farts in the symphony, maybe there's some other funny moment where only you guys know, and you don't laugh, but you're all like, remember that time when Fred did the whatever. What are some of those things?
I mean, just recently, it was strange. We had a guest piccolo player in the Beethoven Pastoral Symphony.
Yeah.
So she actually plays like 6 notes. So she sits the whole time. She plays 6 notes, but she was pregnant, and right before she came in, she fainted, and she fell off the riser, and she actually cut herself, and so that stopped the concert, and we all stopped, and we took her off stage, and then we started again. But like these kind of things happen because this is I mean this is real life. I mean this happened in Finland also. There was a bass player who was a young guy, had a heart attack, and for 5 minutes he was dead. And luckily there was 3, 4 doctors in the hall who brought him back, but for 5 minutes he was out. And I can imagine there's stories like this all over the place. During the Nutcracker, during Christmas time, the main dancer, he went up for a leap, he pulled his ACL and he landed on his face and broke his nose. And like, how can you prepare for that? The curtain came down. There was silence for about 3 minutes. What are we gonna do? And then we just played the pas de deux without the dancers, and that was the most passionate, most moving pas de deux that I've ever played. Everyone's playing these; they don't know what's going on, and the audience is sitting there; they don't know what's going on. So, but these kind of things happen, and it's just part of live music, like you said.
One of the friends of our show, a guy named Derek Jones, plays bass for Cog. And that might not sound like a big deal, but they're playing live every night, and they're way below the stage. So you never see them, except for when he comes out. It's a moment when the band kind of comes out. They participate in the show. But these are highly physical artists. The ones who are on stage, they're climbing and they're jumping, and they blow out things all the time. It's a regular thing because it's such a physical thing for them to do. And then the band has to react. It's like, hey, we're going to vamp for 30 seconds. It's very, very, very dynamic on what they try to do. But they adapt to it. And you guys must have those kind of things too, where you're prepared. I don't know. I mean, it's such a thing, but I guess what I'm saying is how prepared for those kind of things are you guys? And is that the conductor that leads it, or
Yeah, these little incidents, they don't happen often, so we can't really prepare for them. But something that has happened to me a bunch of times is my E string will snap.
yeah,
So when that happens, it's kind of a cool thing because my stand partner will give me his violin, her violin, and I play that violin.
Mhm.
That my violin now goes from here all the way back,
Mhm.
and the last person usually plays that violin without the E string, or will, if it's early enough in the concert, they'll go off stage and change the string. But this happened to me at the proms. I was guest concertmaster with the Qatar Philharmonic, and the last move of Tchaikovsky, my E string pops. So you see it on YouTube. You see my violin going all the way back, and then the whole last page is all on the E string. So the last stand girl, first of all, she, because I was a guest, she didn't know it was a Strad, but she was
Yeah.
sitting there. She just looked so pissed off that she couldn't play this. And then later she realized it was a Strad. So I think it was funny, but it's a whole process where. That kind of stuff, there's a very specific thing on what to
Yeah.
do. But usually, yeah, we don't prepare these things because it rarely happens. Like nobody faints on stage, nobody has a heart attack,
Yeah.
nobody pulls their ACL going up for a jump. So it was yeah, all those times were very special, and yeah, at that time, really, you don't know what to do, and like you said, sometimes the conductor will say, "This is what we're gonna do," but it's a shock for all of us.
We know what great violin players sound like because we've heard a lot of them now, and we can record things. And so, sure, you talk Perlman, we know his name, and so we know that's why he's famous. But what is the difference between the two of you? Like, is there something magical that he does? And I'm just using him as an example because I know his name. I couldn't tell you two things about him. But like in guitar, Jimi Hendrix, and we kind of understand why because he broke the rules and it sounded wonderful. But what's the difference between where you are and then the person who's perceived to be the best in the world?
So I think to compare myself to someone like Itzhak Perlman, we're very close and worlds apart at the same time.
Yeah,
We trained the same way, we worked on the same pieces the same way, but there's something magical about his sound, his interpretation, and every solo is a little bit different. And when students come to me and they want to be soloists, that's the other problem. We don't know what it is that makes them a soloist,
yeah,
because there are violinists that I know who are in the back of New York Phil who could be soloists.
right.
Why are they not? And no one knows the answer to that. Why is Brad Pitt a famous actor and the guy at the gym who's really good looking, who also is an actor, how come he's never been in a
Yeah,
movie? And there's no real answer. And so, yeah, and part of it is desire. I mean, I had no desire as a youngster to be a soloist. I love the stability of being in an orchestra, to not worry about the next. I didn't want to travel. I wanted a family. All these things. Not saying that if I wanted to be a soloist, I would have been a soloist. But early on, that's not something that I was interested in.
right.
So that's one of the things. I mean, the desire to be a soloist, the desire to be an orchestra musician, desire to be a teacher. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone needs different things in life. So for me, this is exactly what I wanted, and so I'm grateful that I have a chance to do what I want to do.
Yeah, no, and it's an incredible thing to be able to do. It's I don't want to take a whole lot more of your time, but one of the things I ask people who do something incredible like what you do. I mean, you play a Stradivarius. I mean, that's from my view, that's the pinnacle of what you can be as someone who plays in an orchestra, and you're the concertmaster. It's hard to get any better than that. And yet there are times in your life where you're like, if I could see Dennis Kim right now, like Brandy Roderick is a Playmate of the Year. She's been on the show, right? She's like, I clean all my own bathrooms, including the toilets for my Airbnbs, as far as what I do. And if you saw me on any given day, I'm probably a mess because I'm doing these things that you would never picture this Playmate. So what is that thing for Dennis Kim? Like, what is the thing that you do that's just so normal, you know?
Well, I think more than my job. First of all, I'm a father and husband. So I remember I would play one night in Carnegie Hall, but my wife would be so happy the next day that I cleaned all the leaves in our lawn in Buffalo, and stuff like that, and taking the garbage out, like she was saying. I mean, because yeah, I mean, my first job and more important job than being a musician is being a father
Yeah.
and husband, and to clean up in the house and like I said, to take the garbage out, to fix the light bulb. I mean, these are things I mean, I think all these people that we see on the screen, or
Yeah.
I mean, they all are human beings that have to fight with their wife and argue with their wives and fight with their teenage daughters. And so, um, Yeah, I'm just a normal guy that has an amazing job. I don't think that I'm a special person. I think my job is amazing. I think that that position is amazing. But yeah, I'm a normal person who, like I said, takes out the garbage and tries to clean up the lawn.
Real briefly, the gardeners are here now. Best thing, worst thing about your job?
Best thing about my job is this idea of like I never go to work. I always, I get to go play. I get to go play music. So that's a great thing. Worst thing about my job, because of the schedule that is not flexible. I mean, I miss my kids' concerts, miss graduation sometimes. When I travel, when I'm in the summer, I travel a lot. I miss anniversaries. So sometimes the job is not so flexible that I can work around my real life. So that part is difficult sometimes. I remember in Buffalo when my daughter was in the finals of her basketball tournament, and I had a concert that day, and I would have done anything to be at that game that she scored and she won, but you miss it. So that kind of stuff is hard. But I'm more grateful than anything because I have a chance to do what I love and do it for a living.
So great. And I just want to say, everybody, this is one of the series of shows that I'm doing for my friend Dr. Robert Greenberg in the spirit of Mozart to Haydn. He did 6 quartets for Haydn. So I'm doing this gift and having these incredible people like Dennis on the show to be a gift for Dr. Bob. So Dr. Bob, this is another one for you, and one of the best violin players in the world who plays one of the best violin ever made. And it's incredible to have you on, man. I really appreciate you doing that. Thank you so much for being on the show.
No, thank you for having me. And it was great talking to you. And you seem so interested and so involved. It was such a pleasure.
I love it. All right, stand by one second.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.